Perfect. So we should see that we are now recording. So we've got a couple of different things that we're accomplishing today. It's always great to get an opportunity to get to talk to everyone and communicate with you all as we're going through this and unpacking some of the examples of public speaking.
To look at it so I can transfer my.
There we go. The important thing for right now is unless you're answering a question of mine, it'd be great if you stay muted, just so that there's not too much echo or repetition going through. But either way, it's generally good. So today's game plan unpacks in 3 ways. 1, I'm going to give you kind of a general update. 2, we're going to talk about the episode of Patriot Act that you were supposed to have watched, which is the broken policing system episode. And we're going to talk about different forms of evidence. As you know, if you watched or were here for the last one, the way that I do this is I'm going to ask you to pull out the examples or the statistics or the ones that you might have mentioned or attempt to answer some of those questions for me, and then I'll kind of guide you through what it is we're looking for, and we'll pull a couple of them for each of the boxes, and then there will be a third one that you'll need to fill in on your own if you haven't already. And then after that, I'm going to talk to you about what is our last speech assignment coming up, because after today, you just have one speech assignment that's kind of broken up over 7 weeks. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. So for a quick general update, and I was saying this before we started recording, so tonight you all have your informative speeches due. I've posted a few announcements about the informative speech, letting you all get a better sense. There was some confusion in the assignment description when I said that there should be no video or Prezi or PowerPoints. And what I meant by no video was you don't need to splice in video clips from other people into your recording. As an online class, you obviously have to record a video of yourself speaking for every assignment that we do to some degree or not. But I have no expectation of you incorporating presentation styles or materials like Prezi or PowerPoint, or being able to edit news video clips into your speeches if you're talking about something that is presentation, that is contemporary or newsworthy. So for that clarification, if you made the mistake of just doing a voiceover over a PowerPoint or a Prezi presentation, I will leave a comment in the assignment asking you to just quickly re-record that speech, and it should be generally the same as the one that you did over, of just you. But don't think too much of it. The other thing is some of you will be. Jade, can you go ahead and mute your, please? Thank you. So the other thing is what you all might slowly start seeing is as I'm going through and I'm grading the demonstration speeches and I'm getting everything else graded right now, you're going to see feedback, but not a grade yet, because I'm going to go in and post all of the number grades at the same time so that everybody sees them at the same time. But I'm giving you the feedback immediately as I'm watching the videos and getting through the videos. So some people will see feedback for their speeches and other people won't at the same time. That doesn't mean that I haven't seen or I'm not grading your speech, just that I haven't gotten to it yet, because it takes a little bit of time and we're kind of moving through things. So that's my kind of general update. Let's talk a little bit about this episode of Patriot Act. So this is probably one of my favorite episodes. This one and then the episode that he did on student debt are 2 of the more impactful ones that have had probably the widest reach from him doing the show. What I particularly love about this episode is what he is showing you is that you can take a topic like police brutality that has been overwhelmingly present in the news, that's very deep in everyone's minds. We're talking about it a lot. And instead of just kind of reciting or giving you all of the same things that you hear, right, all of those same talking points, he took the time to find a new, interesting alternative angle for this issue that both can disarm an audience a little bit, because instead of saying that police are the worst or that police need to be prosecuted or whatever needs to happen, you can talk about something a little bit deeper within the structure, and that more people can get some interest or intrigue to. The other thing I love about this episode is he uses, although he does this for almost every episode, he uses a wide variety of forms of evidence throughout it. So if you took a look at the PowerPoint presentation that I uploaded along with the worksheet, we talk about some of the different types of evidence that we unpack and the core ones that are important for thinking about speaking and how you help a variety of people get a better understanding of them. So you've got examples, statistics, analogies, testimony, and definitions. So let's start with examples to get things unpacked. So one of the things that you tend to notice when using examples is they are ways to make more abstract ideas a little bit more concrete. So when you're talking about something like the broken policing system, or you're talking about how unarmed Black men are being murdered by police officers, right? Or the racial injustice component of these issues, using examples make these topics more concrete. You attach names, places, people, specific events to a broader, more abstract topic in order to get you a better sense of exactly what it is that we're talking about. So what might have been some of the examples I noticed in the episode? Have we watched the episode yet?
Honestly, no.
Okay. So that changes things a little bit from that sense if we haven't actually watched the episode yet. And so instead, I can reorient this to, instead of pulling out specific examples from the episode, using today to kind of guide you on how to watch the episode. And then I'll give you one for each of the categories, but everyone will then be responsible for finding other ones on their own. So if you're also having issues, be sure to check out the PowerPoint that's in this submodule for Module 5, because it breaks things down as well. So examples tend to be really helpful. So as I was saying, to take the thing that is more abstract and make it specific to a context, a place, a time, an individual. So when you're thinking about the like very old grade school understanding of like nouns, right? Your examples are your people, your places, your things that are happening that feel more material and more attachable. So when so for me, one of the more interesting early examples that happen in the episode is Hassan is talking about fear-based training as one of the issues that comes with how the policing system is broken. And so you've got the first example of fear-based training, and I think this all kind of works into one, but where you have Dan Grossman or someone, there's a guy who does fear-based training seminars and tactical training seminars. And Hassan is attempting to make the point that these seminars contribute, and this type of training contributes to the result of, to the death of citizens or of people who are unarmed who should not have been killed by police officers. So to make that issue specific and contextual for people, he talks about how Officer Geronimo, who, for those of you who don't know, is the officer that was involved in the death of Philando Castile, took a Grossman seminar. And so one of the ways in which he was trained to engage in that particular altercation that has had such a significant effect on American public life is someone who took that seminar. And one of our major examples of police brutality, of excessive use of police force, that kind of resonates with a broader American public, is one that you can attach to. So your examples tend to be things that people can get a reference for, what we know. They also might be ways in which you take more complicated topics. So when Hassan is talking about the special rights that are given to police officers, and he wants to talk about the issue of qualified immunity, there's another example, which I'll leave you all to kind of find when you watch the episode, to help people understand how qualified immunity actually works, and also how qualified immunity tends to be something silly. Qualified immunity also happens to be the topic and the one that he really needs to define for the audience, because it's something that we don't really have an understanding of, and is probably a term that we have never heard before. So when you're thinking about defining things, which I only ask you to find one thing that he defines in the episode, right? We figure out that these bigger, complicated topics, the things that we may have never heard before, are the things that need to get defined, what we don't have a reference for. Examples are everywhere. Examples are the easiest things for us to find because we're always giving examples in our daily life, right? Whenever you're trying to explain something to a friend, you're attempting to give them an example. Or you use examples to help them understand it better, and you go through a process of finding the examples that work for your friends, for your family, for your class, whenever you're attempting to prove a point. Statistics, on the other hand, tend to have a way of magnifying the effect of something. So it's our use of numbers. Statistics tend to be the most obvious ones that we find or see as evidence that gets used. We tend to use statistics probably close to as much as we use examples, but in our daily lives, we tend to just make them up for the purposes of effect, right? Like you make an assessment and you're like, I bet, for me, I can say, I bet that at this particular point in time, less than 75% of, or more than 75% of you have not watched this episode of Patriot Act. I use a number like that because it's large, right? Right, bigger has more impact, etc. For Hassan, I think one of the best examples and most impactful examples of statistics comes at the end of the episode when he's talking about communities with arrest warrants. And so if I remember the episode correctly. He's talking about a small town in Missouri, in which there are 21,000 residents, and 16,000 of those residents have arrest warrants. Those are kind of striking. That's a striking statistic that many people, and you break it down into that. But then he also follows it up and he breaks it down into percentages of the population, in which you see that of those 16,000 people with arrest warrants, 96% of them are African American. He compares that statistic to what the African American or Black population in that city is, to see the extent to which there is inequality happening within this particular town, right? So he uses multiple kinds of statistics within a specific example to show that it is outlandish if 40 to 50% of your population is Black or African American, but 96% of the people who are being arrested or have arrest warrants are Black or African American. There isn't really a better statistic or example to show police brutality and inequality, right? Or the way in which racial discrimination happens by the police, because there isn't a narrative, right? And these examples become special and interesting, and impactful, because you compare it to what tends to be the massive crime rate examples, right? So you pick a random small town in Missouri instead of a major city like Chicago or Atlanta, where you might have a higher or larger Black or African American population, because there are ways to challenge those statistics. And that's just me kind of unpacking the statistic as well, which also helps you do the explanation portion of this, right? Which I jumped over a little, so let me pull back. So the statistic that you would identify is the 21,000 residents, with 16,000 of them having arrest warrants, showing a lot of crime. 96% of the people who have arrest warrants are Black or African American. So we've got our statistic. Now you explain why might Hassan have used that statistic. And that is all of the interpretive work that I just did about why you pick this community, why these numbers are striking, why this might induce some shock in an audience to hear these numbers together. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Sometimes I move a little bit fast, so please, if you need me to repeat something or if something doesn't make sense, let me know. Of course, you'll be able to go back and listen to it again, but if you need alternative explanations, that's what I'm here for. So statistics tend to have magnifying effects. Examples tend to have specifying effects or material effects on an audience. So you help them relate to it by getting more specific with an example. You help them experience or react to something by giving them statistics that magnify effects. The next thing that we do is we incorporate analogies. So analogies are like figurative language. So think of them at their most basic level. Forms of analogies are like similes and metaphors that get used in English classes or in literary classes. The purpose of analogies are to help take something that is abstract, far away, or unknown to us and relate it to something that is similar or that we might have had personal experience or personal understanding for. So within the episode, what might be one of the best analogies or one of my favorite analogies that he gives also happens very early in the episode. So he's talking about how the average police officer does 8 hours of in conflict de-escalation training, and 129 hours of fear-based emergency training. And so at first you might be like, okay, but that could make sense, couldn't it? And so so he brings in an analogy to explain it to you. And he's like, imagine if a pilot spent 8 hours learning how to fly a plane, but 129 hours learning how to go down the emergency slide. So this analogy becomes impactful because most of us have probably ridden in a plane. If that was your pilot, you would lose your mind, right? You wouldn't want to. You would never get on a plane with a pilot who only spent 8 hours learning how to fly a plane and the rest of their training learning how to survive if the plane crashed. So analogies serve the purpose of making something similar or relatable to us based on what could be our common experiences that we have. Analogies tend to be the hardest ones for people to pick up on or understand as analogies, but are some of the most impactful forms of evidence that get used, which is why, and we'll get to this in a moment when we get to the TikTok series, at least one of your episodes will require you to come up with an analogy for your topic. So we have examples, which take something abstract, give us a specific material instance to latch onto. We have statistics, which help magnify effect. And then we have analogies, which help make a topic or an issue relatable to us. The last big one is forms of testimony. Testimony is about adding credibility or expertise to a topic that you may not have. So a big question that a lot of people were having and a struggle that a lot of people were expressing to me was, how do you create a form of credibility statement or establish credibility for your informative speech topics? Do you just say that you've done research? Testimony is one of the ways that you can kind of help with that. So credibility comes from your personal relationships as well. So at the beginning of the episode, Hassan talks about how he has empathy and can empathize with the plight of Black and African American people in the United States because he has experienced his own forms of racial inequality, but recognizes his absence of identification with a group or a population that is most impacted. So instead, throughout the episode, he incorporates people in forms of experts who can talk more clearly and explicitly about this. The best, most powerful one happens towards the end of the episode. He introduces a man named Professor Michael Eric Dyson. He's a professor of law who studies prosecutor and police relationships. And in doing so, he talks at length about how the relationship between prosecutors and police officers makes it almost impossible for us to ever receive legal justice against police officers who commit crimes. So your examples of testimony are always going to happen when he introduces a new person into the segment, right? When someone who is not him is talking for a while. Then you just have to figure out what that piece of testimony is doing. In this case, is it providing expert testimony to add credibility to the topic? In other cases, is it about personal testimony? So someone who has experienced it, someone who had, so if someone were to be doing a speech or a series around sexual assault, right? Maybe incorporating the words or testimony of some of famous assault victims, say the Jane Doe from the Stanford rape case from 2015, into the speech that might add personal attachment, story, narrative to it that makes it more illuminating for us. So testimony becomes important because you can personalize it as well as add expertise to a topic. Definitions are helpful simply for the fact that sometimes you're talking about bigger, complicated issues or topics, and you need to be able to figure out what needs to be defined based on who your audience is. Qualified immunity is something that most of us have never heard of before, so it's something that has to get defined and unpacked. So what will become important for you all in the final paper on the Patriot Act analysis? I've done quite a bit of talking. This is fun. What I like about class much better is I can just play the episode really quickly, and then we all talk, and then I don't have to talk as much. And also when I make bad jokes, you all force laughter, because it makes me feel better. But when it gets to the final version of this, so when you pick the episode that you're going to write the paper on, this is what I want you to be able to do. I want you to be able to find when and how he's using examples, analogies, testimonies, statistics, and help be able to answer the question, why did he pick that statistic? Why did he interview that person? Why use that analogy? Why does that analogy work? Instead of just identifying that he's using different forms of evidence, I want you to help answer the why question. So the explanation portion of this worksheet is probably most important, because I want you to take a moment to figure out, why do the thing he does? Why does this work? Why does this all work together to make a great, cool, interesting, complex, and impactful argument? Are there questions about this worksheet before we move on to talking about the TikTok assignment? I was going to wait a moment because there's a plane flying by. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what is this big, complicated, not that complicated assignment that you all have coming up, this TikTok series. So the TikTok series is a very interesting new assignment for me, because what I want us to think about is, when we're doing public speaking in a digital environment, one of the most impactful, powerful, interesting ways that we incorporate ourselves into the world is through social media. Social media is becoming a means by which political revolutions have happened. In 2010 and 2011, it was very important and impactful to what it was called the Arab Spring and protests in Egypt, Tunisia, and other Middle East, North African countries. In addition to that, social media has become a means by which we communicate about politics in the United States. Whether it's your grandparents, mom and dad, or whoever, sharing and exchanging words on Facebook about Trump or about Biden or about Hillary Clinton or about whoever, or it's about people talking about and unpacking conspiracies on TikTok or YouTube or any of these other platforms. So, how do we start adapting messages to different social media platforms? How do we talk about issues that are important to us, whether it's about technology, economics, politics, social justice, personal issues, individual care? So, hopefully at this point, you have started doing a lot of background research on that topic. That's the point of the informative speech, is to do that background research so that you can show me that you have an understanding of the topic. Now, you have to think about, how do I fit that into a series of 30-second to 1 minute long videos? So, how do you now attempt to change people's mind or bring awareness or add your own personal connection or spin to a topic in a series of videos that can work on their own but are connected in a series? Essentially, you're giving a 7-minute long persuasive speech over a series of segments and adapting it to the style of a platform. You do not have to upload this video to TikTok or Instagram or any other social media platform. You are more than welcome to just record the video and send it to me. You'll see in the assignment folders, there are 7 different folders together. If you choose to upload your videos to TikTok, and if you manage to have at least one of your videos go viral, if you manage to get a video with 100,000 views or more on it, we could earn extra credit, because there's nothing quite like seeing effect or generating interest in something that happens. But that is not required for you for this speech. Also, FYI, for any of you, and if you all have a GroupMe or whatever for the class, there is an announcement up there for a survey that ends today. That's an extra credit opportunity for the whole class. Just a side note. So if you all have a class GroupMe, feel free to tell people to go click that link. It's like a quick 20-minute survey for extra credit in the class. But so that's what this TikTok series is attempting to accomplish. So if you were interested in advocating that we defund the police, right, as something that is a contemporary issue, how do you break down the issue of defunding the police into a series of 7 segments? Maybe you have an informative segment, maybe, right, that gives some background. Maybe your segments are connected to different examples of violence that all kind of compound upon each other in order to make the point that the police have to be defunded. So, as you're thinking about this, what I am looking for from you first and foremost is for you to start sketching out what this series looks like. So on October 7th, you have a deadline for your first initial sketch. So this sketch can happen by way of an outline that's very informal. It could be a word map, a mind map, a film map, a strip map, whatever works best for you. But what I would like to see is how you have started thinking about the series as a whole, as well as how you might be able to break that up into 7 different segments. So we'll start there, and then after that, each week on Friday, 1 segment is due. So over the next 7 weeks after that, you have to turn in a 1-minute video to me. That's all that I have. So now the rest of our time is just for you all to ask any questions or any additional clarifying questions that you might have, whether it's about the Patriot Act analysis stuff, about the TikTok series, or anything else in the class. So if you have no questions, you're free to pop out of the meeting. If you have questions, you're free to stick around.
I actually have one question.
Yes.
So for the informative speech that's due today, do we turn in the informative bibliography worksheet as well?
Yes, you should turn in the bibliography with all of your sources with it as well.
It's under the same Dropbox for the speech that we submitted in, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I had something to add to that question. I actually kind of did the outline and the bibliography page together, and then
That's fine.
I turned it in, even though it was late for the outline part. I actually turned it in today with the speech. But is it okay if everything was just all on one document, like
Yeah,
the
that's
bibliography worksheet and the outline?
totally fine.
Okay. So that we all did, is that still open or did that already close from the first video?
So I haven't done the extra credit assignment for that yet. That's going to come later in the semester. The extra credit assignment I was referring to, it's just there's a survey. There's a study that one of the grad students in the program is doing, and they're collecting data through about the death of Chadwick Boseman. And so there's an announcement up on iCollege for you to go do a quick 20-minute survey answering some questions about that. But the introduction speech extra credit assignment doesn't exist yet.
Okay, thank you so much.
And one more question. So for the TikTok series, these are to be turned in every week. I kind of tuned in a little late on that.
Yeah, you're fine. Yes. So the deadline for each one is weekly. You can the folders will all be open. So you're if you are just on top of it, you can do a bunch of them at once if you want to. But you have a week between each one to kind of put together the details of each segment.
Okay, and extra credit if they go viral?
And my standard for that is if you choose to post it to TikTok and you get 100,000 views or more, that's kind of where the entryway into one going viral would be.
Okay, but we would kind of save that video from our phone and then submit it to the Dropbox on iCollege?
Yep.
Okay, all right, thanks.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording.